what's up? I just want to do one more video to cap this series. So I want to say with the first video in this series where I'm appearing in this outfit, I made just a reference to the fact that I'm wearing a hat that might look like something that would be called like a boonie hat. I understand, like from a military, and that would be like something that might have been carried by like Western maybe. I think like in military conflicts, like whatever one side of a military has might be used by the others, because in real fighting you're actually fighting with the enemy's weapons, and it's like you're not shy about like ripping off whatever the enemy has to use it against them. I don't mean to say enemy as though we're not talking about human beings, but like my father's from a region of Southwest Africa that experienced an actual order of genocide that was carried out, and so you had men, women, and children that were not taken as POWs and were executed, sometimes in extended, vulnerable, surrendered positions. And that was actually that was the order, and that was the intention, was to obliterate and eliminate and remove that seed of people from the earth. That was an actual genocide camp order put out by the I think that had been the country of Germany. So that was like the nation state of Prussia at that time, the late 1800s. But I think, I don't know if it was then called Germany, but it was essentially the German nation that put out a genocide order against the Herero people, and also the Nama people. But that doesn't leave out other people in that area. And I've said that there's no ranking or comparing atrocity. Violence is violence, murder is murder, pain is pain, suffering is suffering, and that crosses all thresholds and boundaries and social and economic lines as we cannot imagine. Is that it's wrong to do wrong to people, is all that is. But for learning, is that like the people where my father came from would be like the Herero people, and some of them actually mounted up resistance. My father tells me that I had an ancestor that was valiant, and I had a direct ancestor that was valiant in putting resistance against the German people. So like in that area of Southwest Africa, you had like around that time, like leading into that conflict, but then part of that conflict, you would have like riders, like shock troops, would be like maybe a squadron of maybe like anywhere from like 4 to 8 people that would be like mounted horseback, and they would brutalize and run down on and murder families, homesteads, people. And I think you had both sides of that, because a lot of times enemy people, you become like what you're up against, and also people imitate tactics. So that would be like some of your Western interests, like maybe British interests around South Africa, and then also like German interests around the Southwest Africa. And you had like a confiscation of cattle at that point. Was very contentious for like the people that my father comes from, have a deeper relationship with cattle than a lot of people could appreciate. The cattle are actually the people, if you go deep enough into that. And and so even my father, he's been raised in modern times, and he has a PhD, but if you get him to talking about cattle, he has a certain way of feeling about cattle that is actually deeper than how people would feel about money. Like a lot of people, you don't play with the man's money, is problems when money's on the table. When it's cattle on the table, going back, it had been like that and more. And you can still see that in my dad. I live in the United States, where we don't see as many people of indigenous native background as I would like to see. And I think a lot of the history goes that. But sometimes when I go to outlying areas, and I'll see deer on the road, like the deer is just brutal. So you have people like, they're living the good life. They're hauling their campers up and down the road, boats up and down the road, nice cars up the road, motorcycles, and then people are living life, and life is good. People are prospering. But then you have like a deer right there that's maimed, bloody. We would appreciate it as a carcass, but that's actually a living being that is dead right there. Now you would imagine that a lot of that type of outcome would have had to happen to the people that were here, that we don't see them anymore. They would have to experience. They have had to fall. Fell means like when people are falled, they're felon. But I would say that the people are actually, whatever supports a people, the people are that. So for where my father's from, that had been like the cattle, the nations such as the German nation, they were confiscating, but also maybe brutalizing, and maybe we could say ravishing the cattle, because we know one thing about Eurocentrism from the present day and likely past iterations, Eurocentrism has always been attended by fine taste and fine appetite that may not be in balance with the natural environment. European culture has a proclivity for fine food and a lot of appetite. So there has always been ravishing, like a lot of what's going on any given day, Monday, Sunday through Sunday, what's going on at any time. People are feasting all the time. People are basically feasting at all times. Fine food, great food, lots of food, more than you can handle all the time. We can imagine that was existing back then, and that might have been part of the contention that actually led to the genocide campaign, would be the way that the cattle were being treated. But if you appreciate the cattle as the people and the people as the cattle, one another, supporting one another, feeding one another, dying into and being reborn through one another, on and on, that and killing in that sense, dying in that sense, is not murder, because you are replacing the cattle, you are replacing the people, and they are one another. They are living together. They're being born together, living together, dying together, being reborn together. Is the people and the cattle, the people and the animal, the people and the land. So you see where I'm at. We don't see many indigenous people. I had maybe like one in my entire working life. I had 2 people of indigenous background that are co-workers where I live, and it's an area that where the indigenous people have prospered, and they still have strong numbers in certain areas. But I've worked with 2 people of an indigenous background, and I had significant feeling towards both of them. One of them was a close friend. They both taught me a lot in different ways. One male, one female, equally as beautiful. But we simply don't see a lot of indigenous people. But I think that sometimes when you see like the deer on the side of the road like that, the deer are hurting. They would have to hurt to die like that. And the deer are still the land. And so that might be some of what we have for our native indigenous people to this day, are still suffering to this day. The deer, I would say that the indigenous people are still within the deer. I would say, I'll go as far as to say that what we have and appreciate is our indigenous people of the geographical region of the United States are the land and are the animals of the land that maintain the land. So what we have left for the indigenous people, we could say, are also the deer. So when people are hunting for sport, running over animals carelessly as though we're entitled to run up and down the highway in the land at 80 miles an hour at any time of day or night, the land is still suffering, the animals are still suffering, the indigenous people by that reasoning are still suffering. But what I meant to say is that so I didn't mean to be loose about when I was talking about referencing the hat from the military. Oh, before where my father's from, to this day, when they put on their uniform, the uniform that represents resistance to the genocide, is actually it's actually a German uniform, and that represents having confiscated the uniform and using it back to protect themselves, using the actual means of their opposition to protect themselves from the opposition. So what I say is that you could maybe say that in other times, like maybe in conflicts like in Southeast Asia, as much as like Western forces might have had boonies, you could say that maybe the people protecting that land would also have boonies. Is just the same to maybe come across it or use it to protect themselves. And I didn't mean to, in this channel I make certain references to conflict and war, but if you think about it, if you actually had a war going on, right, you might have people, you might have children that are not involved in the war, civilians that are not involved in the war, but mayhem, violence, people are getting their brains busted out, people are getting set on fire, people are getting any kind of atrocity happen right in front of other people that are living their normal life. A lot of life can be appreciated by war like that. It's not necessarily always in those terms, though it is like that, because like you take people of color, like people of a certain appearance in the geographical region of the United States. What is the music talking about? What is the conversation online talking about? What is a lot of the media talking about? It's talking about these very heinous outcomes happening in broad daylight, broad society, just like any other time of war. Is that you always have war is like it's just an activity that goes on along with life. Life has always gone on. War has always gone on. We could say war has always gone on right next to life. Life has always gone on right next to war. So a lot of us are actually experiencing war at this point. You know, you get bombarded with different bills and stuff like that, usurers. You get all kinds of obstructions. You get all kinds of heinous stuff is going on. And sometimes it's very subtle and understated, but it's real. And then you get some of these extreme examples where you see someone laid out, or you see a crime scene or something like that. At that point, it materialized, but it had always been going on underground that whole time. So I just want to say that that's some of how I reference the military in this. But also, I wanted to say that what gets people to, you take about how mad you'd have to be to put up a fight like the people in Southeast Asia did. It might be stuff like what the people experience with their cattle, where my father's from, or the deer in the northern United States. And it's the inequity what causes that. And that's all I'm saying with this video, is that we have a lot of inequity to this day.